Our scripture reading is from Matthew, recounting words attributed to Jesus. The lamp of the body is the eye. If your eye is sound, your whole body will be filled with light. But if your eye is diseased, your whole body will be in darkness. And if the light inside you is darkness, how great the darkness will be. No one can serve two superiors. You will either hate one and love the other, or be attentive to one and despise the other. You cannot give yourself to God and money.
The Jewish rabbi and philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel said that never once in my life did I ask God for success or wisdom or power or fame. I asked for wonder, and God gave it to me. I've been captured by this prayer. I think in my life I've more often sought happiness or joy or contentment or peace, but not wonder. And so I've been contemplating this idea of awe, of wonder. Perhaps it is more essential to walking this path of love than I realized. On the face of it, wonder may seem a ridiculous thing to strive for when it feels like society is crumbling around us, that the world is on fire. But I want to take this morning to explore this idea of awe and what it might hold for us. Recently read about scientists who are researching and studying the emotion of awe. When you study something, you often start with a definition. And they say that awe is distinct from joy or the appreciation of beauty. Awe is more the feeling of being in the presence of something vast, something that transcends your current understanding of the world and of life. Dasher Keltner is a professor of psychology, and he focuses his time and research on emotions like awe. He assembled a team, and they talked with, researched, studied people all around the world, a diverse group of people. And they identified 8 different things that evoke awe in us: music, nature, collective experience, being in a drum circle or going to a concert and you're kind of caught up in that experience with the crowd. Astonishing patterns like fractals and spirals and even feats of architecture. Mystical experiences, epiphanies, that sort of aha moment when new connections are made. Moments of birth and death. And moral beauty, a life that's lived with courage. And I think all of those resonate. We've probably all had some mix of all of those different kinds of experiences. You're standing on the north rim of the Grand Canyon, listening to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, looking into the eyes of a newborn, contemplating a total eclipse. We even experience awe in the face of death. When I was 16, I was in the hospital room when my grandmother passed away, and I was gripped by the mystery of her sudden absence. The world is full of opportunities for wonder, not just these mountaintop types of experiences, but small ways every day, like a hummingbird just drinking nectar from a trumpet flower. All the different kinds of varieties of birdsong we hear right outside our door, or watching the kids up here on the puppet show. I have got the best view. Why does awe matter? What makes it unique? When folks studied awe, they also looked at the effects of awe on human beings and found that awe helps quiet the ego, that thing which keeps us turned inward on ourselves. That awe dispels this false idea that we are separate and discrete and helps us sense our connectedness to the whole. It gives us a greater sense of our place in the whole of things. It's accompanied by feelings of humility and smallness. Rabbi Heschel also said, the meaning of awe is to realize that life takes place under wide horizons, horizons that range beyond the span of an individual life or even the life of a nation, a generation, or an era. Awe enables us to sense in small things the beginning of infinite significance, to sense the ultimate in the common and the simple, to feel in the rush of the passing the stillness of the eternal. We have opportunities for awe all around us every day, and I wonder how many we miss. The rabbi said, to the prophets, wonder is a form of thinking. It is an attitude that never ceases, a disposition. Wonder is an emotion, an emotional response, but it is also a disposition, a particular way of seeing and responding to the world. The scripture from today comes from the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy or sound, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is unhealthy, diseased, your whole body will be full of darkness. If in the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two superiors, for you will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. And here's how I interpret this. The way we see affects how we are, what shines forth from us. Does goodness and truth and life and love shine forth from us, or does its opposite? What does it mean then to have a healthy or a sound eye? The Greek word that's used in this passage is the word haplous, which means clear, simple, sincere, free of deceit, complete, blameless. It's sort of a simple purity to sight. What's interesting is the antonym for haplous in Greek is diplous, and that sort of has this connotation of being folded. It means having a double agenda, having an agenda. The eye that is diseased, unhealthy, drawing from another word used here, is to have sight full of misery and pain and toil, full of harm and deceit. If you take that all together, an unhealthy eye, to see in that way, through those eyes, is to see others and the world with an agenda, to see the world in its capacity to serve our ends, to look at a forest and see profit, to look at another and see them as a stepping stone to success or a barrier in the way. It's to overlook all that is good and beautiful and true, to forget that we're part of a much larger horizon. The unhealthy gaze is trained on serving wealth and personal gain. That's why at the end of all of this discussion about lamps and body and light, Jesus says, you cannot serve God and wealth. You see this unhealthy gaze alive and well in our country right now, taken to its extreme. The ruthless pursuit of wealth and personal gain by the richest among us. And it's not that wealth in and of itself is bad, but living in service to the accumulation of it, making profit the core organizing principle of life, our motivation, how we view the world and other people. And if we're being honest, we are all probably caught up in this way of seeing to some extent. Our vision has been calibrated to the organizing principles of capitalism, self-interest, profit maximization, competition, private property, limited government, and regulation. Our focus has not been set to awe and wonder and appreciation. To see with a sound, healthy eye is to see the world as a pure gift, with vision calibrated to wonder. To look at a forest and simply be amazed, or to behold another and celebrate the gift they are to the world. To see beyond the span of our individual lives, our generation, our era, our nation. To feel our connection to the whole and long for all to flourish. This is a seeing that is free of agenda. It's outwardly expansive, not solipsistic. If we train ourselves to see this way more and more, like the scripture says, we will shine light into the world and scatter the darkness. I love these words of Rabbi Heschel's. Our goal should be to live life in radical amazement. Get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. I don't know about you, but that is not how I wake up most days. And you get the awake Erica. The 8:15 service sees me struggle a little bit more. I would love to wake up that way, for that to be sort of my default way of looking at the world. And working on the sermon has reminded me that I need to recalibrate my vision. I have been taking in a steady diet of bad news. And I want to know what's going on. I want to see how we get from here to wherever it is we're going. I want to support my friends in the federal government who are being asked to do things that they abhor, and be there for my friends who have had grants frozen and may lose their jobs, those put on administrative leave because they attended a DEI seminar in the past. I care about all of the lives being harmed by the shuttering of USAID, and all those who have lost temporary protected status and never had status at all, and are having their lives upended. I want to know. I want to see these things. And the truth is, this is not the whole picture. Yeah, I want to witness these hard things, and there is also infinitely more to see. Even in the midst of the absurdity and the grief, we can make space for wonder. Perhaps, at least for me, it begins with a prayer: God, give me wonder. Turning back for a moment to the science of awe, I mentioned that researchers identified 8 things around the world throughout different groups of people that sort of evoke awe in us. The most significant one, the most predominant one, was moral beauty. Moral beauty is like witnessing, hearing about people's courage, kindness, strength, overcoming in the face of adversity or extreme circumstances. In our Christian faith tradition, we have Jesus as an exemplar of that moral beauty. Hear those words: "There is no greater love than this, than to lay one's life down for one's friends." Or, suffering himself, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I recently came across the story of Etty Hillesum. Some of you may be familiar with her. Hers is a profound story of moral beauty, and I want to share that with you this morning. So Etty was a Jewish Dutch woman, a gifted intellectual, and she kept a diary from 1941 to 1943, during the German occupation of the Netherlands. She began her diary at the age of 27, She was murdered alongside her family at Auschwitz in 1943 at the age of 29. So Eddie was raised in a secular Jewish household, an intellectual household. But in the last 3 years of her life, which you can see through her journals, she develops this keen sense of God's presence and this profound spirituality. Early in 1942, she was forced to wear a yellow star to identify herself as a Jew. And she, in her journal, noted what was happening around her: restricted movement, reports of Jews being transported out of the Netherlands and perishing in Poland. And she wrote, "Even if we stay alive, we shall carry the wounds with us throughout our lives. And yet I don't think that life is meaningless. And God is not accountable to us for the senseless harm we cause one another." In July of that year, she volunteered to accompany the first group of Jews who were sent to the Westerbork transit camp. Originally, it was designed to house 1,500 people fleeing from Germany. At the end, it had 40,000 people. During her time there, she wrote, and this is in her imagination, "I am in Poland every day, on the battlefields, if that's what one can call them. I often see visions of poisonous green smoke. I am with the hungry, with the ill-treated and the dying, every day. But I'm also with the jasmine, and with that piece of blue sky beyond my window. There is room for everything in a single life." She goes on to write, "All I want to say is this: the misery here is quite terrible, and yet, late at night, when the day has slunk away into the depths behind me, I often walk with a spring in my step along the barbed wire. Then time and again it soars straight from my heart. I can't help it, that's just the way it is, like some elementary force, the feeling that life is glorious and magnificent, and that one day we shall be building a whole new world. There must be someone to live through it all and bear witness to the fact that God lived, even in these times." When Eddie and her family were forced onto a train from the Netherlands to Auschwitz in September of 1943, she quickly wrote these lines on a postcard and threw it from the train. "God is my high tower. In the end, the departure came without warning. We left the camp singing, 'Thank you for all your kindness and care.'" That is a life that transcends my understanding. Things can feel really overwhelming. The darkness closing in can feel heavy and hard, but it also has a way of helping us recalibrate our vision to wonder, if we let it. As Eddie said, there is room for everything in a single life. With eyes trained to awe, even in the midst of absurdity, we can testify, we can show with our lives, God lives, love lives, truth lives, goodness lives. In his last interview in the early 70s, Rabbi Heschel was asked, is there one thing you want to communicate to all of the young people out there today? And he said, "Let them remember that there is a meaning beyond absurdity. Let them be sure that every little deed counts, that every word has power, and that we can do, everyone, our share to redeem the world, in spite of all the absurdities and all of the frustrations and all the disappointment. And above all, remember that the meaning of life is to live life as if it were a work of art. Give thanks for Rabbi Heschel and Eddie Hillesum and countless others who have lived lives of moral courage, whose lives were a work of art and inspire awe within us. Those who call us to see beyond ourselves, to contemplate ourselves in a place in the whole. I think it's safe to say that St. Andrew's Church, here we feel a collective call to stand up and to resist all of the wrong happening in our country. That is not a call to return to living comfortable, unbothered lives centered around the organizing principles of capitalism and the accumulation of goods, but a call to work for something far more beautiful and lovely and just. And that work, perhaps, begins with wonder. And in radical amazement, we find meaning and encouragement and inspiration to help us walk this path of love together toward a much larger horizon. Thank you, and I invite you now to your own reflections.